Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. We are in another episode of Meet Me at the Intersection of Housing. My name is Shalon Hawkins, and I am the CEO and publisher of Shelter Force and the host. And I am so excited about today's conversation. This guest is near and dear to my heart, good friend and colleague, Marcia Wright-Soika. Thank you for joining me today. Tell the people about who you are.
Thank you so much for having me, Shalon. And I'm really excited about today's conversation too. So I'm Marcia Wright-Soika. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the executive director of Family Works, which is based in Seattle, serving largely the north end of the city with food insecurity and family support services. I have been the executive director at Family Works for a little over 4 years now. I started at Family Works during the pandemic, which was a very interesting time to be in leadership of an organization. But a lot of the things that we learned about our organization and the ways that we need to show up to meet skyrocketing food insecurity, which has still persisted to today, in many ways has provided the keys for our future and the future ways that we are providing these services to the community. So a little bit about me. I live in Seattle now. I moved here in 2018, but I am born and raised on the East Coast. I'm originally from New York. Um,
Shout out to the East Coast.
Lon and I, once upon a time, were colleagues at YWCA Delaware because I did live in the Philly, Delaware area for many years in my career, and but I now consider Seattle to be my home.
Oh, no. I gotta make it out to Seattle. I hear so many wonderful things. So I have to make my way out there soon. But anyway, so how are you feeling today? I know that is like a loaded question sometimes, but I really wanted to know, like, before we get started, how are you feeling today?
Today, I feel really optimistic. Family Works has been in the process of a really important hiring a process for a new leadership position, and just being able to reflect on the incredible candidates and the folks that we've met over the last couple of weeks makes me really excited about our future. So I'm holding on to that feeling today.
Oh, good, good, good. All right. So I like to ask everybody that joins me before we get to the meat of the conversation, tell the folks something about yourself that they may not know. And
So
maybe I don't know either.
I think I think you know this,
Okay.
but I some people do not know that I started my career off as a journalist. I worked for a suburban daily newspaper in the Philly area called the Times Herald, and my focus was on covering education and local government, and in a lot of ways, some of the grassroots efforts of a community where I lived and where I worked, to hold on to resources for the community. They were looking for accountability from their local government leaders. They were looking to hold their schools accountable, and they were fighting hard to keep their hospital in town. And they were not successful. The hospital did eventually leave this
Mm,
community. And seeing the process, honestly, was the inspiration that I needed in order to leave journalism. I felt really strongly that I did not want to be on the sidelines observing people who were fighting for accountability from their community for the resources that they really needed to raise their kids. And that really started me looking into the nonprofit sector as the ways that I wanted to further my career and some of the things that I cared about. And so, yeah, I think that that's probably something that people do not know about me.
oh, thank you for sharing. And so before we get started, I feel like I'm at church. This is like the third start, right? Okay, let me stop that. But I do want to introduce those that are tuning in right now that you are joining us for another episode of Meet Me at the Intersection of Housing. And today we are talking with Marcia Wright-Soika, who's the Executive Director of Family Work Seattle. And today's conversation is a good one. We are going to be talking about the intersectionality of food insecurity and affordable housing, which is nicely bundled under community development, or what I'd like to say community building. And so with Marcia talking about being a journalist before jumping into the nonprofit space. So she is well aware of the importance of preserving democracy and supporting an organization like Shelter Force and the work that we do. And it just so happens that Marcia is the reason why, well, one of the reasons why I have joined Shelter Force. This will be my fourth year. She sent me the job posting for Shelter Force because she was, or still is, I'm assuming, a reader of Shelter Force, as she has some work in affordable housing, in the affordable housing space. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But yeah, so that's something else that you guys didn't know, that she has something to do with me being where I am today. All right. So as we're talking about food insecurity and we're talking about community building and affordable housing, tell me, Marcia, why is it so important for this work at this moment in time?
Yeah, I think, thank you so much for asking that question. I think that sometimes because people are not seeing the same headlines that they did during the pandemic about food bank lines wrapped around the block, people having difficulty affording groceries, making really, really tough choices about the food that they need to feed their families and being able to afford that and everything else, that there is this feeling like things have improved.
Mm,
And in my community in Seattle where I live, but also looking nationally at the statistics, food insecurity is at an all-time high.
mm,
And I think that one of the things that people maybe forget is that whenever you have significant economic disruption that happens from something, an event like the pandemic, or years prior to that, the economic recession of '08, it can sometimes take a good decade before
mm,
people are starting to get back to um, the normal levels, for lack of a better word, of some of these really, really disruptive things to their household, like food insecurity. And I think that part of the reason why it's really critical to have this discussion and some of the ways that Family Works is targeting our services is that the highest and most increasing number of folks in our community who are experiencing food insecurity are the ones who are raising young children.
mm.
And that intersects with so many things, including what we're going to discuss today, which is the ability to afford and stabilize your housing. So I think that that's really why it's important that we have this discussion at this time.
Okay, so why, so what is the impact that you're seeing, or the intersectionality that you're seeing with affordable housing? And and I ask that question, it can seem very very like elementary because it, when you think about it logically, like, of course, right? I feel like everything intersects with housing and the stability of housing, right? And so when that's interrupted, talk to me a little bit about that interruption and when it comes to food insecurity and what and how and if any way that that Family Works is partnering with affordable housing organizations.
Yeah, when I talk to my affordable housing colleagues. So Family Works does not directly do affordable housing. Prior to being ED of this organization, I used to work for Mercy Housing, which is a national affordable housing developer and owner and provider. And so those relationships have really continued into my new role because the vast majority of families that Family Works serves are marginalized economically, racially, and also with food insecurity. And so the conversations that I have with my community partners who are still directly involved in housing will tell you that some of the trends that they are seeing as far as people not being able to pay the rent, people who are even unfortunately facing housing instability and an eviction are the people who tend to be the most stable when they are in an affordable housing setting, which are families with children. Because typically, housing instability looks very different for families with children. They might double up. They might do anything possible to keep a roof over their head and draw on some of the family resources that they might have to make sure that the housing is like first and foremost the one
Right.
thing we can provide. And so when you start to see that trend in affordable housing, it shows you just how much some of the affordability crisis and things like that are really playing out among this population. And housing costs in Seattle specifically are among the highest in the nation.
Mhm.
And so what that also does is sometimes puts people in uninhabitable situations, or they move further and further and further out of the city, away from jobs, away from schools, in order to be able to keep pace with the skyrocketing housing costs.
Hmm. Thank you for that. Oh, wow. I feel like I can go into so many different directions because when you talk about school and then you talk about your previous work with covering education, and I'm thinking about our next series for Shelter Force, which is looking at the intersection of education and affordable housing, right? And so think when you talk about schools, one of the things that we learned as we were gathering information for this upcoming series is how important schools are in communities, right? And how they are when a school shuts down, how it destabilizes the whole community. And so when I think about schools and I think about food insecurity, I'm thinking about all of these things that are destabilizers when you talk about building community. Do you have any thoughts around that?
Yeah, I do. Seattle is going through a real sea change in terms of the um, really troubling economic forecast for the local public school system. One of the ways that schools get funded in Washington State is by enrollment. And so when you have children who are moving out of the city and away from city public schools because of things like affordability and a number of other factors for their families, or opting out of the district, it reduces the district's resources and their ability to provide education for the vast majority of the students who live here. The Seattle Public Schools is facing a lot of really tough decisions like school consolidations and closings. And so I think that that actually pairs really well with your next topic, because I'm sure it's not a trend that's unique to Seattle, but it is something that we're grappling with here.
And so when it comes to food insecurity and family works, um, are you guys, how are you all partner? Are you, well, let me ask, are you partnering with schools in the area?
We are actually, I would say that two of the real key strategic partners for Family Works to be able to reach families where they live, learn, and grow
Mhm.
are with school communities and then also with housing communities.
Mm.
So I'll start with school communities first. Family Works is one of a number of food banks that provide weekend hunger backpacks to kids in schools who will lose access to school meals over the weekend and therefore deal with food insecurity before they can come back to the school day on Monday. And so that's a really critical element of our work. Another thing that we do is that we have a mobile food pantry that basically takes our food bank and puts it on wheels and on the road. And we partner with a number of school communities to bring that mobile food pantry at times where parents and kids can shop from the mobile food pantry. That is also a service that we bring to affordable housing communities, including the one that I'm broadcasting from, which is where one of Family Works locations is. So I think that those are some of the ways that we really nurture school partnerships. We have a strategic partnership with Seattle Public Schools to bring satellite family resources to two of their campuses. One is a high school in North Seattle. The other is a K-8 school in North Seattle. And we have staff that are there on site helping people to understand some of the benefits that they are eligible for and how to enroll in them, as well as to search for community resources that help to build stability in their household without having to leave the trusted community of where your kids go to school in order to find those resources. And so I think that one of the things that's really interesting is that when things like Sunbucks, or some people might know of it as summer EBT, some of the enhanced SNAP benefits that are offered to families over the summer were coming online in this community. We were able to work really closely with school partners to make sure that families knew what they were eligible for and how to get access to that. Same thing with SNAP, same thing with WIC and other income supports that really fight food insecurity in someone's household. So that's really what we're doing more so on the school partnership side. And then on the housing side, I mentioned that I'm broadcasting from an affordable housing community. When Family Works was in a position where we were looking for programming space to really be able to increase and enhance the program offerings that we had, and we're running out of space in our too small location, 20 or so blocks away, that where we tried to do everything. We opened an affordable housing, in an affordable housing community, a new family resource center. And so that family resource center has dedicated staff that helps to focus on, again, that enrollment and navigation of community and public benefits. It also offers playgroups and access to a diaper bank and a community closet for clothing. So these are just some of the things that we focus on when it comes to essential needs for a household. And many of the people who visit our Family Resource Center are residents here of this affordable housing community. It is one of the densest in the North Seattle area. It's 254 units of affordable housing, many 2 and 3 bedrooms, and therefore many families.
Right.
Located near light rail and the local high school. And so it's a really, really good partnership for us, and is also providing the keys for other affordable housing partnerships to come in the next few years.
Okay, so I'm going to pause. If you are tuning in and if you have a question, please put it in the comments during under our live feed, and we will try to get to them. So two things come to mind, Marcia. The first thing is you're doing all of these wonderful things in the community, and what I know about, doing some research and, being connected to you, that you guys do a really good job of listening to the community. And so when we think about the community development field, or we think about community building, a lot of times, we come in with great intentions, right? And so we see a problem, like you said before, I don't want to be on the sideline. I want to get activated, right? And sometimes we are so passionate and we have such good intentions that we don't necessarily consider the communities that are being affected. So can you talk to me about how Family Works fosters that communication between your program staff and the community that it's serving?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that question and that tension to light, because intention does not always lead to positive impact.
Absolutely.
And Family Works is one of many organizations that has had those missteps in the past where we didn't have a dedicated way of being able to gather input and co-decision making with our community about the ways and the hows that we deliver our services. I'm really proud of the fact that that has really shifted and we're exercising different muscles when it comes to program participant input and centering family voice. When we underwent our most recent strategic plan, we spent a considerable amount of our resources on focus groups that were multilingual,
Mhm.
convening a multilingual survey over many weeks so that way we can make sure that we got truly representative voice in impacting our future direction. And now that we have articulated some of the strategies and the ways that we want to grow our work and impact the community, which has been informed by the community, one of our big outcomes from that was to convene a participant advisory committee called PAC for short, which just kicked off this year. And we have been able to build a very diverse coalition of folks who have maybe been participating in our services for a long time, or maybe even just a short time, to ensure that their voices are at the table. And when we are considering things like policy shifts, how and where we are delivering services, program ideas, et cetera, we know that we can nurture those ideas with community at the center as a core partner in how we do things. And so really excited for that work and just the ways that we really want to move forward with a participant-centric model.
No, I love that. Um, and so we talk a lot about you've been talking a lot about, just recently the strategic planning and sort of like new direction and all of these things, right? And it has me wondering, what is your personal connection to this? So why get up and do this? Why are you so passionate? Why, are you looking to, move from one facility to the next, creating mobile opportunities, talking to the community, and so on and so forth? What is your personal connection to this, Marcia?
Yeah, I think it's a little hard to answer that, but I will just start with the fact that my auntie has been a nurse my whole life.
Mm.
And she had, when I was very young, taken me on some of her mission trips to Jamaica, where she was providing healthcare services to folks who didn't have access. That's where my family is from. And she would also take me to the soup kitchen at her church. And when I was, you know, done kind of like with whatever volunteer activities that I had to do and things like that, all the things that they put, an 8-year-old in charge of,
Right.
I really wanted to just sit down and hear about people's lives. And I just think that that had a really formative impact on just the way, I don't know, that I see the world, I guess. And, I think that in terms of daily motivation, as far as expanding our reach and reaching people where they live, learn, and grow, part of the reason that I continue to do it is because it matters. We get these letters. We have conversations with folks who tell us how important it was that we saw them and that we were willing to go directly to them with services instead of some of the ways that um, people who are marginalized by poverty tend to expect service delivery, which is really in unfriendly and non-culturally responsive environments where there's a lot of hoops and a lot of barriers, and where people are not necessarily centering convenience, thinking about like what you are experiencing in your day and all of the other things that you are dealing with on top of trying to have enough resources to support your household. And so when we get the affirmation that it matters, that we're being disruptive to the ways that people have typically accessed services, yeah, it's easier to deal with some of the not fun and
Yeah.
less inspirational, I guess, parts of my job.
Yeah. Oh, love it. Okay, so you talked about, how you see the world. So tell me, with you being in this space, tell me some things that you were seeing in the housing, not housing, excuse me, but in the food insecurity space. And what are the things that you think that people should be paying attention to?
So I think I'll just start with um, the things that are inspiring, which is that Family Works is one of many organizations, because there has to be many of us doing this work. And I think I'm just really inspired by my colleagues here at Family Works, but also my colleagues throughout food access and food security programming in the city, because they really are bringing like their best thinking to this work, and in terms of trying to make sure that families have access to the food and other resources that they need. And so it makes it easier to know that there's a lot of us who are bringing really positive, inventive, innovative, and creative thinking to the solutions that matter.
Mm,
Um, I think in terms of what I'm paying attention to, it's really more so in the policy space.
mhm,
And this affects housing as well. Seattle, as of right now, I'm not sure exactly how many of your listeners are paying attention to Seattle budget discussions, but we are projecting an economic um, uh, gap of about 240 million from the last forecast,
mm,
in terms of the resources that we have versus the resources that we need to pay for essential city services, including human services.
mm,
There are many of my colleagues in human services, whether we're talking about housing or we're talking about gender-based violence programs, or we're talking about homelessness services and shelter, or youth services, or seniors, as well as food, who are really, really concerned about some of the trade-offs that will be made in this budget season, and to ensure that we have the resources to meet what is really, really persistently high need. I think that when I look out at the state forecast, it's pretty similar. It's a pretty similar story for Washington State. And so again, some of those same concerns. And then federally, a lot of the resources that we have and that individual households have to address food insecurity, among so many other affordability challenges, is the Farm Bill,
mm,
which has not moved forward as quickly as we would like.
mm,
There has been some movement, but in the most recent draft of the Farm Bill that was passed by the House Agricultural Subcommittee, it has really, really, really challenging elements that could potentially cut things like SNAP benefits
mm,
for like $30 billion over the 5 years that the Farm Bill is authorized. And so there are many of us who are really raising our voices saying, like, we need a Farm Bill. We need to know what the individual household resources are, as well as the state resources are to fight food insecurity amongst so many other food issues. And we would rather not have a bad farm bill because we know that that locks in really, really challenging situations for families who are marginalized by food insecurity. So those are the things that I think I and many of the people in this work are keeping their eyes on, both locally and federally. Really, really challenging things that are coming out of our policymakers.
Man, wow. So when we talked earlier on in the week and we were talking a little bit about this, you mentioned making sure that you have the legislative ears. So as an executive in this role, um, how important is it for you to connect with those at the local and state level when it comes to the work that you're doing?
It's very important. Um, the experiences that we have as a community-based organization are the ones that we need to surface and make really, really clear to our policymakers that the decisions that you are making matter to the households, to the
Yeah.
people, the families we serve. So we know what it looks like to cut SNAP. We have been through that before. We know
Mm,
that that means that there are fewer healthful items that and reduced purchasing power that families experiencing poverty have when those
mm,
types of decisions are made. And so in my meetings, in my discussions with folks at the city or state reps, or more increasingly our congressional representatives, I focus on stories. I focus
yeah.
on the individual experiences of the families who are coming through our family resource center or our food bank or visiting our mobile food pantry. So that way they know the stakes. And I think that there's a lot of us who are in nonprofit or community-based or grassroots work that feel like it's really essential to have the ear of policymakers because we know the stakes.
Mm. Yeah, thank you for that. I was just going to ask, what are if someone is tuning in and they're, doing this work, what are some of the things that you focus in on when you're talking about, gaining that legislative ear? And so it's good to hear, the storytelling. So folks have like that first person encounter, like, you know what I mean? It's like sometimes, when you're stuck in office, you know what I mean? You're a little out of touch, you know that it's supposed to, you're supposed to do right by the people, but to actually to see, feel, touch, hear, experience that for a moment, it definitely makes a difference and definitely can be achieved by telling the story. Um, so one of the things that I know about Marcia and that I always say to her affectionately is that she is like the fundraising guru. And so um and I want to take a moment to talk about, raising dollars because in this work is so important and we can't like shy away from it. It takes the resources in order to be able to meet the needs of the community. And oftentimes, talking to readers and talking to our our friends that are connected to Shelter Force and the work that we write on, the conversation is about funding. How is it that we can get more resources to do the work that we need to do? Because here's the thing, is that you start a program and with, like we talked about earlier, all of the good intentions, you start this, let's say, food program, and you have these families that are benefiting, relying, starting to get used to it. You're building trust with the community. They're seeing you as a resource, reliable, and then the funding dries up.
Yeah.
And then the program has to go away. And
Yeah.
then what I say is that, these families catch a stray. you know what I mean? Because of the lack of resources. So talk a little bit about, what your journey has been. And it doesn't necessarily have to be with Family Works because you've been doing this for such a long time. But what is your journey and what is something that you can leave folks with a tip or advice when it comes to, gaining resources for the work that they're doing?
Everything that you said just resonates so deeply. And it's really challenging,
Mm.
because philanthropy has trends, and sometimes it's really difficult to anticipate what those are. I can say that really my journey at just about every organization where I did lead the revenue generating strategy, was really just focusing on diversifying our resources. So having a mixture of the sort of like reimbursable, government contracts that can help you project your funds a few years out and also give you some space to take the risks for the areas of the work that they simply will not fund. And even that is increasingly difficult as there is more and more competition for public dollars. I got an email like last week that Family Works had gotten a grant from the county where they funded, I think, like, I don't know, 9 or 11 organizations out of the 70 applications that they received, and distributed somewhere between 5 to 6 million in support out of the 60 million in requests that they had received. And I think that there's a lot of people out there who feel that really resonates. And it makes it very, very difficult to resource this work time and time again. But I think just having as diverse a strategy as you can about where resources will come from and really balancing that, in terms of staff time and your time as an ED and how you're supporting your development staff if you have it, is really critical in being able to ride the whims and the ebbs and flows and the changing trends of philanthropy.
Thank you. Diversifying. Yeah. I feel like everyone's diversifying, you know, personally, professionally, you know. Absolutely. So two things before we get out of here. Uh the first thing is you have been in this role for, is it 4 years or
Yeah,
five?
just over 4 years.
Is 4 years? Okay. So talk to me a little bit about um being in this role as a woman of color. Can you talk about like the challenges, some of the wins, anything that you can share?
Yeah, it's interesting because like I only know my experience, and my
Right,
experience has
right.
only been as a Black woman. I think that as I've gotten older, over the course of my career, that has changed some of the, I don't know, patience, I guess I have for having my work or my voice discounted. I think that I have a bit more to say than maybe before, when I was worried about, you know, being able to navigate this career and being able to make the contacts. I spent many years in the nonprofit sector in a development and fundraising role. And so that comes with its own challenges when you show up as a Black woman and you're asking for hundreds of thousands and billions and millions of dollars, in terms of the the trust and the competence and all of that people extend to you when you're having those conversations. And I just think that now I'm at a stage where I'm willing to kind of call any, discrimination or ways that I'm being treated differently on its face and have the person deal with the fact that I know, that I'm not being treated in a way that's fair. But that said, I think that has also given me a lens of really wanting to make different choices
Mm.
for the younger generation of Black women and non-binary leaders who are coming behind me,
Mm.
making sure that they have safe spaces to have these discussions with me and with other people that they trust, making sure that if they're working either at Family Works or working with me as a colleague in
Right.
the coalition space, that they have a safe space to let their guards down
Right.
and know that they have a supportive ear on the other side. And I think that is everything. One of the things I will say about Seattle, which might be a little surprising to people because it is such a white city, is how nurturing Black women in the nonprofit space and in community-based organization spaces were to me when I was brand new
Mm.
and stepped off the plane. How many of them reached out when they saw an announcement about my hiring in the paper, or just came up to me at a community meeting and just let me know that they could see me, and they knew that I was new, and if I needed anything, I could reach out to them. And I just think that has also provided me just like a model of leadership and community care that I just think is really essential to be a Black woman in this space, and something I'm really proud to pay forward.
Wow. I love that. Creating the space, safe space. I love that. I love that. Mm.
And that's what I have with you, Shalon.
Right. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
we know each other. We've known each other a long time,
Right.
and we've had the tough conversations whether we were colleagues in the same organization or not,
Or not. Yeah.
and built each other up at times where we really needed it. And so, yeah, I'm just really excited to be on the other side
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
you in this
And I
conversation.
mean, it definitely feels really good to your point, being on the other side, to be able to reach back and to be the one creating that space. It does. It feels really, really good. And so I love that for you. And I love that we're able to create that even with each other. And then the last question that I have for you is circling back to Family Works, is tell us about what's new. What is your focus for the next year? What can we expect from Family Works Seattle? Yeah, all that good stuff.
Yeah, thank you. So we are just in like the final stages. We're about 98% to goal of our Nourishing Communities capital campaign.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you very much. It
I
included
told y'all she was a fundraising guru.
we're raising $7 million to reach more families where they live, learn, and grow. That is
Mm.
just like something that we're really holding on to as a mantra for our work. And the the Family Resource Center that we opened at an affordable housing community last fall was a
Mhm.
big part of it. So we're not like waiting to spend the money. We're like actively spending the money as we raise it. And next year, it will include a renovation of our food bank where we've called home for about 2.5 decades, which will also, I think, allow us to have space that's a little bit more effective for some of the rapidly growing mobile food programs that we have, like our mobile
Okay.
food pantry. Another thing that will be coming up is that we're expanding our mobile food pantry program. And so the truck that is going to be one of our mobile food pantries of the future, is currently being built right now, which
Oh,
is
wow.
very, very exciting. We have convened this mobile food pantry program now for a little over 3 years. And so we're taking a lot of those lessons learned in building the new truck and some of the ways that it can help to resolve some of the challenges that we experienced our first time out. So yeah, those are just
So
some
will
of the
this be will be your second truck
They'll
or
be your second,
oh,
yeah.
okay, we're creating a fleet of mobile
I don't
access.
know about
Yes.
I don't know about a fleet, but I think that we have seen a real growing wait list and request list from community partners that really see that as a game changer for being able to connect some of the families and individuals that they serve to food resources. And so we're really leaning into that and listening to community and trying to be responsive by expanding that program. So yeah, those are just a few things that are on the horizon, and things we're really honored to be raising the resources and having the community and the public trust to deliver on in the next few years.
Oh, thank you so much. Congratulations on almost making gold. 98% is not bad. That is nothing to sneeze at. That is amazing. Congratulations. And congratulations on bridging that gap. Transportation, when it comes to marginalized communities and services, is a huge barrier. And so congratulations to you and your team for knocking that barrier down and bringing the resources to the community. Um, mm, Love, love, love. And thank you for joining me today on another episode of Meet Me at the Intersection of Housing. And those that have been tuning in, thank you so much for tuning in today. If you hadn't had a chance, it will be available on our site, and Marcia will share it with your team too, so that you can share it out too. But again, thank you. Have a wonderful rest of your Thursday.
Thank you for having me. This has been really lovely. Thank you.